Every once in a while, we need to look at our podcast to see how things are working, especially in the production area. While we look at the analytics every month to see how our podcast is performing, it's always good to check out to see the production process and see if there are any areas that can be improved. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through the steps that you need to take to do a quick audit for your podcast. I'm Yesenia, your video podcast and content creation coach, and this is Focus and Move Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Podcast Starter Kit and is part of the Podcasting Essentials series. When you think of auditing your podcast and your content, you're really doing an evaluation from all of the different aspects and things that happen in your podcast production workflows. So you're evaluating everything from the brainstorming and ideation portion and then to the distribution and marketing of your podcast content. And since we're talking about podcasting, the first thing that you want to look at is the sound quality. When you audit your audio for your podcast, you're looking at things such as microphone selection, your recording space, any accessories that you have when you're recording, like a pop filter. Maybe you don't have one, and maybe that's something that you might want to consider investing in. Maybe you're recording in a space in which you have a lot of solid surfaces and there's a bit of echo. So what can you do to improve the recording space? You don't need to have a fancy schmancy studio. You don't need all the super equipment. You can just start with what you have, but you want to make sure that you're optimizing the space and the things that you have to create this content so that then you can say, well, this equipment works, but it is time for me to then upgrade. Don't just go and saying, well, I'm creating a podcast, I need to buy the most expensive and fancy equipment. That's not the case. And if you have a video podcast, some of the things that you may want to consider in the process of evaluating everything is you want to make sure that you have the highest quality resolution that you can produce with the equipment that you have. You want to also look at the lighting that you have. You don't have to have the fanciest equipment. If you're watching this on YouTube, you probably have seen me with different setups here, but today I wanted to make it simpler and just add one single light, which is adding a little bit of a pop of color to match some of the colors of my brand. And the main light is really a window light that is coming from my left. As you're evaluating the video quality, you also want to look at the framing and the space that you have wherever you are recording your episode to make sure that it looks good and makes sense for your brand and for the type of podcast that you're creating. The next thing that you want to look at is making sure that your podcast content is in alignment with your business objectives. Here, you're going to make sure that you're maximizing the relevance and the effectiveness of your content in relation to the goals that you have for your business, whether it is you are using it to attract more clients so that you can have more coaching clients, or maybe you're connecting it to a course, and maybe you're using your podcast as a platform to get more speaking engagements, or you want to gain more speaking engagements, or maybe have some brand partnerships. So you always want to go back to your why and the reason why you're creating the content, and then making sure that the role that you have assigned for your content, the podcast, is still making sense and in alignment with your business goals. The next thing that we're evaluating is the marketing and distribution of your podcast. Here, you want to make sure that you are leveraging social media and other platforms for your podcast promotion. So you want to look at how you're using Instagram. If you're on Instagram, like reels, stories, carousels, you want to be aware of the different features that each of these platforms have so that you can maximize that in relation to how you're promoting your content, and then maximize the impact that you can create in the people that you can reach through your content. Another thing that you can look at is whether or not you're growing your email audience. So how are you using a lead magnet? Do you have a lead magnet? If you don't have a lead magnet, then that's your sign to start working on that so you can start building your email list. Other things that you can do is, are you creating a blog on your website for your content? How are you doing with email marketing? So these are just a couple of things that you can look at whenever you're auditing your podcasting distribution and marketing efforts. And because we're working towards not just launching a podcast, we're really working towards building a sustainable podcast production so that you can continuously create content that is of value and serve your audience and keep working towards the goals that you have for your business. You always want to see how you are engaging with your audience in the various platforms. This could be by requesting feedbacks via stories or emails, or maybe having a question tied to each episode in your Spotify profile, or even asking your audience to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or rate them on Spotify, or or wherever they are listening to their podcast. And if you're sharing your content on YouTube, you can engage with your audience with the community tab or ask a question, and then your audience can then answer in the description. And if they like their content, to subscribe to your channel. Speaking of, and you're enjoying this mini series, let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or if you like, go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss out any upcoming episodes, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform. See you on the next one.